Stand By Your Man singer Tammy Wynette had an incredibly tumultuous personal life, fraught with several bad marriages and periods of substance abuse. Her knack for abusing prescription drugs ended up being what killed her in 1998, and many speculate Tammy used drugs to escape from her various abusive relationships. At her death, Tammy had been married to fifth husband George Richey for 2 decades. Though their marriage lasted a long time, it was only because Tammy was afraid to leave. Near the beginning of their marriage, Tammy was supposedly kidnapped. After her death, it was revealed by her daughter the kidnapping was actually staged to cover up an equally vile crime that occurred within Tammy's own home. Join Facts First as the truth about Tammy Wynette's kidnapping has finally been revealed. Tammy Wynette had an incredibly tumultuous and storied personal life, and one of the strangest incidents from the Stand By Your Man singer's biography remains the alleged kidnapping in 1978 that found the star beaten and bruised nearly 100 miles from her home. Authorities were baffled for numerous reasons when Tammy reported the crime, and no culprit was ever found. However, after her death 2 decades later, one of Tammy's daughters came out with the truth about the alleged kidnapping. The incident occurred in October of 1978. And Tammy had married fifth and final husband George Richey in July of that year. Her marriage had come not long after her disastrous marriage to another George Jones. Her relationship with George Jones had been a business and personal one, with the two singing together in addition to being married. Tammy Wynette and George Jones's marriage hadn't been successful, and their careers had taken a notable downward trajectory by the time they got divorced. This happened in 1975, and George Richey was actively pursuing a relationship with Tammy near the end of her marriage to George Jones. But Tammy decided to marry someone else after divorcing Jones, her fourth husband Michael Tomlin. This marriage lasted for less than a year. George Richey had promised her he was going to help revive her career after a period of waning success, and he ended up doing so, though not without a price. When Tammy reported the alleged 1978 abduction that occurred mere months after tying the knot with George Richey, she claimed she left her car door unlocked while going into a supermarket and that a man had snuck into the car while she was inside the store. She then claimed that when she got back into the car, the man stuck a gun to her head from the back seat and told her to drive. Tammy ended up nearly 100 miles away and claimed the man beat her as she was driving. The physical abuse the alleged kidnapper had inflicted upon the country singer was fairly severe, and the police questioned why the alleged perpetrator had been so aggressive. Tammy showed up at the house of a woman named Jeanette Young after the alleged kidnapper had supposedly abandoned her and taken off with her car. Jeanette could see the country singer was pretty badly injured and went to get her a wet rag to clean her wounds. In addition to the nonsensical severity of the beatings, Nashville police were also confused about why the kidnapper had chosen not to steal any money from the wealthy star. Not only did she have $40 in cash on her at the time, she also had several credit cards. Tammy also claimed she hadn't seen the face of the perpetrator and had a hard time giving any physical description to the police. Her alleged kidnapping baffled authorities, and the crime remains officially unsolved to this day. But after her death 2 decades later, one of Tammy's daughters came out with a story that explained the mysterious kidnapping. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. And stick around for more about the mysterious kidnapping of Tammy Wynette. In 2000, a few years after Tammy Wynette's death, one of her daughters released a book that claimed to solve the mystery of the supposed 1978 abduction. According to the daughter, Jackie Daly, her mother was, in fact, lying about the kidnapping, but it wasn't for a reason anyone could have predicted. When Tammy's kidnapping started making the news, the authorities weren't the only ones skeptical of the singer's claims. Many fans and onlookers felt that something didn't add up in her story, and many theories developed as to why she would have faked such a thing. Some suggested she had done it for attention, given that she was no longer the celebrity she once was. Others suggested that the oft unfaithful Tammy had made the story up to cover up an affair she was having on her then new husband George Richey. According to daughter Jackie, her mother did make up the story to cover something up, and the thing she was covering up did involve George Richey. Jackie has claimed her mother made the story up to cover up abuse that had been inflicted upon her mother by George Richey during a domestic dispute. There are many things about the story that do add up. For one thing, though Tammy and George Richey's marriage ended up lasting 2 decades, it was never a very pleasant one. Even if George didn't inflict the damage on his wife that had been supposedly inflicted by the kidnapper, he still did plenty of other messed up things, beginning before they even tied the knot. Another thing that makes sense about Jackie's story is it explains the serious nature of the physical injuries Tammy received during the supposed kidnapping. Previously, authorities had been left perplexed by the physical injuries that had supposedly been inflicted upon her. Though Tammy had passed away by the time her daughter Jackie came forward with her story, George Richey was still alive. Understandably, he had some issues with Jackie's account. Richey claims he was innocent, saying the notion he would ever have abused Tammy as being ridiculous. Jackie Daly claims she learned the truth about the supposed kidnapping by eavesdropping on her mother's conversations around the time of the incident. According to Jackie, she and her new stepfather had gotten into an argument, and George Richey had proceeded to beat Tammy to a pulp. When Tammy threatened to go to the authorities with the truth of what happened, George Richey blackmailed her with undisclosed personal information, claiming he would write a tell-all book about her and destroy her career. If this account is correct, it was George Richey who plotted the kidnapping, and likely George Richey who was the one who actually drove Tammy nearly 100 miles away from their home in Nashville. Whether Jackie's story of spousal abuse is true or not, Tammy ended up staying with George Richey for 2 decades after the incident. But their marriage was never a bright spot for the singer, and many believe the relationship eventually led to her death from a prescription drug overdose. Although George did help Tammy get her career back on track over the course of the 80s and into the 90s, he likely did more damage to her personal life than his boost was worth. Though Tammy was never happy during her 5th marriage, she apparently bottled up all the pain inside and only let those closest to her know how badly she was hurting. Personal friends claim the singer was in an incredibly distressed state in the months leading up to her 1998 death, though they had a hard time putting their finger on exactly why. Many claim the singer's marriage to George Richey was more of a business arrangement than a loving one, and it appears as if this might have been the case. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think Tammy Wynette was really kidnapped in 1978? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.